Liar. Everywhere. On netrootsradio.com. David Waldman. Kagro. In the morning. Now, here's David Waldman.
Hey, good morning, everybody. How you doing? Thursday, April 18th, 2024. Time for another show. Time marches on. Nothing we can do about it. I have thought about trying to stop it, but I can't figure out a way to do it at this point. Just one of my favorite fantasies of all time, to be able to just stop the clock and take a nap for a little while, like Donald Trump in court, for instance, but just not miss anything. It would be fantastic to be able to do that, but it's not something you can actually pull off. We're back in court, I guess today, Thursday. Yesterday was community service day for the judge. I'm not certain what sort of community service it is that he's doing, but better that we don't find out, or else Donald Trump will attack it and then ruin it as weirdos show up to try and disrupt it. So they should be taking that advice, by the way, I think, in the press before they give out as much information as they've been giving out, as much as possible, about the jurors who are being seated. They're describing them in tremendous detail, which really ought not to be happening, but I guess there's nothing legally that you can do about it. This is open court, after all. This is information that reporters are observing happening in open court. There's no reason to prevent them, or no mechanism by which you can prevent them, although you could, I don't know, I guess you could appeal to their sense of propriety. But I guess that's kind of out the window at this point. All right, so trial begins again today. It's probably happening now, which means that we won't be able to follow along necessarily. Although, if there's anything just flagrant that just absolutely needs our attention, you can feel free to try to wave your hand in our face in some way through one of the electronic media by which we make ourselves available for these things. And I don't know. What can I tell you? Good luck to all of us trying to get through today. Greg Dworkin will be here. He's got a roundup of stories that are, some of which are not actually about Trump, although quite a few of them probably are. And, well, I don't know. Also, as it turns out, yesterday the Senate dispensed with the Mayorkas impeachment. We figured that they were going to try and short-circuit it in some way, and they did it in the most straightforward way. The articles of impeachment were presented on Tuesday by the House managers. On Wednesday, they took care of business. In addition to, I don't even know, I guess they must have, did they go so far as to swear people in as jurors? I don't know. I got to take a look at the procedure here. I just have read the aftermath that they just voted not, well, the upshot of it was that they voted not to hold a trial at all. And Republicans are crying and deciding that this is now precedent going forward. And I guess the next time I assume that this means to them, next time the Democratic House impeaches someone, Republicans will just vote to dismiss it. I mean, wait a minute, hold on a minute. What I mean is, if Democrats in the House vote to impeach a Republican, then we'll just ignore it and chuck it out, which I guess, has kind of always been the option. It's just that ordinarily people consider the impeachments to have been well considered. That's using the word consider twice in the same sentence, but who's going to enforce that rule against me? But this was the issue. This was a joke from the start. And it was, I guess Mitch McConnell was very upset that he believes, or he says he believes right now, and I don't know whether he would be believing the same thing if he were the majority leader and the shoe were on the other foot. I don't think so, but his complaint is that when the House says there needs to be an impeachment trial, there needs to be an impeachment trial. I don't believe he ever really thinks that the House should get that much power to schedule what happens in the Senate. And I'm sure if they were jamming him, he'd very happily be searching around for some way to dispense with that nonsense. And this is it. But you can't just send joke impeachments to the House and derail everything in the Senate, especially when they have work to do before a recess. And everyone knows that the recess scheduling is clearly the most important thing there is in America. It's not anywhere in the Constitution. Show me in the Constitution where it says that they have to go, or for that matter, have to have Valentine's dinners rather than spending more time on an impeachment rather than less. There's no rules with this stuff. Anyway, very unhappy are the Republicans, but that's life in the minority. So anyway, let's round up a couple of other things. Greg Dworkin is here. I better get to it before we all officially are supposed to fall asleep, because the president of the United States, who's on trial, the guy who said he was president anyway, it's a race to see who nods off first. Good morning, Greg. How are you?
Good morning. So, if you're going to nod off, those of you listening at home, and including David's home,
yes,
understand that you're going to be nodding off because of procedure. Why? Because I'm always fascinated by congressional procedure, because I don't know anything about it. David does. So I have all these questions, and then I ask him. And that's what half the show is half the time.
Right. And then Homer
now,
says,
it turns out that...
What? Oops, sorry.
Yeah. But,
okay, Homer.
But even if it is...
Yes.
I don't know how long I've been doing the show with you.
I am not bored by it at all.
But it's all been leading up to today, because like yesterday was procedure day.
Yeah, and I missed
and
most of the Senate procedure, unfortunately. But I'll catch up with that as we move on.
Well, so here's the thing.
Okay, you'll catch me up.
The reporters and the expert procedure people were super excited about the swearing in of the jurors yesterday in the Senate.
So I did go forward with that.
Because you actually go up to the desk and you sign something.
Yeah.
And so they get to count who's left-handed. I mean, they need to know. And so now you have visual proof. Oh, this one's left-handed. Oh, this one's not.
Yeah, okay.
So that ceremony took place. So I believe, people who know more can correct me, and everybody knows more. But I think they were sworn in. And then the interesting part is, and I'll skip the technical jargon.
All right.
But basically, the Democrats said, look, we tried to reason with you. We went over this on the show yesterday. We were going to give you time to debate the way you asked, but you keep asking stupid things. We're not going to give it to you. So as a result, here's what we're going to do. And Chuck Schumer did a really smart thing. He didn't table the motion.
Okay. What
he did is he said, I read them. I took them seriously. Turns out there's no there.
Yeah.
Where's the beef? There's no high crime and misdemeanor in impeachment Article 1. We're going to vote to dismiss it because it's unconstitutional. You have to bring up something that's a high crime and misdemeanor. This ain't it. It's a policy dispute. So that's basically, in technical terms, we're not doing this. It's stupid.
Okay. Yeah. Or in your terms.
That's bullshit.
Exactly.
Right?
You knew it.
And then they did the same thing for the second one. And then they said, we're going to adjourn this trial. Sine die.
Oh, okay. I like it. Okay, that's a good description, and it makes a lot of sense to me. And I think...
And sine die, by the way, means, without a day.
Yeah.
That is to say,
come back
there
here,
is no date to come back, which is to say, we're done.
Yeah. That's the final word on it. Sine die. Adjournment sine die for the Senate itself is when their term is done, right? And they've had an election and they're getting ready for the next January 3rd swearing in. They adjourn sine die. That's the end of everything. So the jury is adjourned sine die. That's good procedure. That's good thinking.
Yeah, we didn't know how he was going to do it, and he did it in the best, most efficient way that gave the Republicans the least amount of anything. The whole thing took like 3.5 hours.
There was no opportunity for them to filibuster or make procedural objections, et cetera, et cetera. There was no trial anymore. Okay. That's a good one. They did it while they were in, I guess, like an executive session.
Well, they weren't exactly an executive session, because one of the things that Ted Cruz wanted is to go into executive session. I think that got voted down.
Okay.
I think that what Schumer was saying is this doesn't even rise to the level of, like, we're dealing with this seriously.
Yeah.
This is just stupid, and we're getting rid of it now.
Okay. Well, that seems to have worked pretty well then, and I guess
it was almost as if Barney Frank was in charge. This was great.
No one got called a table or anything like that, but it sounds like it's the equivalent in the judiciary would be like, well, the charges were dismissed as insufficient. There was, as a matter of law, there's no there's not enough evidence to even impanel a jury, really.
The charges were dismissed
They
with
were the
prejudice.
jury, of course. Yes, that'll go along with the sine die thing. But yeah, that
exactly.
meaning there's no chance to bring them back up. But
Don't
yeah,
even
if you, I guess it's kind of like a demurrer almost, except that the parties didn't actually have to appear. But basically, you said if everything the prosecution has to say is true, it's not a crime still, so we're just not going to go ahead with this procedure. So yeah, there was no trial. It's like getting your case dismissed in pretrial motions.
Yep.
Okay.
So it's pretty cool.
Yeah, I like that. All right.
That was the Senate.
Womp womp.
Okay.
For you guys.
And there's the House.
Yes. Oh.
And actually, the House is even more interesting in a lot of different ways. Often is. But in this particular case, Mike Johnson is on the hot seat. So Mike Johnson, or as they're calling him on Twitter, YOLO Johnson.
Leroy Johnson.
Leroy Johnson. So he goes and he has a intelligence briefing.
Why?
And he comes out of it having found God.
Well, he's, I guess...
Not inappropriate given who he is and what his background is.
Right. We figured he would probably... he finds God everywhere. But it's just, he's the hammer and nail
Jake Sherman put it like this. God. I was struck by this quote from Speaker Johnson yesterday. Until yesterday, he had yet to make a case for Ukraine aid, and then he unfurled this. Oh. And I have a minute and 8 of him saying it in a tweet I sent you from...
Oh. Okay.
I don't know if you could play it, but...
Yeah, let me see.
It's the Asin one.
Oh, okay. Let's look for that. Oh, okay. I think I saw the wrong one here. Let's see. Right up at the top of today's thing here? Where is it?
So, well, you know what? I'll send it to you right at the bottom. So
all right.
You'll have it
instead of the top, what if it was the exact opposite?
There it is.
Okay.
And it's relatively short. Johnson explains his position. And given what his position had been up until now, which is mealy-mouthed, I got more important things to do. This is just remarkable.
Okay, let's see.
And that's why I want to play it.
Bookmark that one over in Pocket, and we'll go there and take a look and Twitter, and I go to Twitter, and I click there, and then the tweet comes up, and then
you put a quarter in.
Yep. Okay. All right. Here we go. Let's see. Do we have the sound up on this and everything?
These foreign aid packages, Ukraine, Taiwan, Israel, letting the House
Jake
work its will,
Tapper.
and then sending over to the Senate into one bill,
Setting
whatever passes. Why didn't you do this months ago? I mean, Ukraine is desperate for aid.
Yeah, they are. Well, it takes a long time to socialize and build consensus when you have the smallest majority in U.S. history, so that's part of it, and it's very practical politics here. But also, we've had other big lifts in this Congress. As you know, we had to get the government appropriations bills done, and then we had to do the renewal of the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act, and some pretty heavy measures, and it was a lot to handle at one time. Look, we know what the timetable is. We know the urgency in Ukraine and in Israel, and we are going to stand by
also defend your
Israel,
washing machine,
our close ally and dear friend, and we're going to stand for freedom and make sure that Vladimir Putin doesn't march through Europe. These are important responsibilities. A strong America is good for the entire world. Since World War II, really, the responsibility for the free world has been shifted onto our shoulders, and we accept that role. We're an exceptional nation. We're the greatest nation on the planet, and we have to act like it. And we have to project to Putin and Xi and Iran and North Korea and anybody else that we will defend freedom. It doesn't mean boots on the ground. We're not the world's policemen, but we're going to do the
right. So you get the gist of it. All of a sudden, it's getting serious.
Yeah, I guess so.
Right.
Jake Tapper.
Even better, Jake Sherman has this quote from him.
Yes.
This is a critical time right now, a critical time on the world stage. I can make a selfless decision and do something that's different, but I'm doing here what I believe to be the right thing. That's why they're calling him YOLO Johnson. I think providing lethal aid to Ukraine right now is critically important. I really do. I think the intel and the briefings that we've gotten, I believe Xi, Putin, and Iran really are an axis of evil. I think they're in coordination. So I think Putin would continue to march through Europe if he were allowed. I think he might go for the Balkans next. Been done. I think he might have a showdown with Poland or one of our NATO allies. That's been done too. To put it bluntly, said Johnson, I would rather send bullets to Ukraine than American boys. My son's going to begin in the Naval Academy this fall. This is a live fire exercise for me. It's not a game. It's not a joke. So he gets super duper serious about getting aid to Ukraine.
Okay.
Why was it put off for all this time? Well, firstly, he's an idiot. Secondly, he just got his, I'm paying attention to it briefing like this week. And the politics have become ripe in the sense that he realizes there's no way out.
Okay.
And so what he did was the stupidest possible way to get this done from his perspective.
Yeah.
Not from my perspective, from his perspective. He could have, wink, wink, nudge, nudge, tell his allies and buddies and not so buddies, hey, if you guys want to do a discharge petition, that's fine. And then what would have happened is a discharge petition would have come, and Johnson could have thrown up his hands and said, well, in the House, it's not me. They overruled me.
Yeah.
Which is what a discharge petition is. They could have gotten to the same place by defeating the previous question, although that would open up for Democrats a little bit more. But instead what he does is he puts 4 bills together separately. So he doesn't combine them into an omnibus because his faction, the House Freedom Caucus, hates omnibuses.
They're very long. You can't read them.
Or minibuses or whatever you want to call it.
No buses is what they're saying.
Right. Take the train. So he puts together a Ukraine bill, an Israel bill, a Taiwan bill, all with aid, and then something or other about TikTok, not even sure what, doesn't matter. And he says, we'll package them together under a single rule. And because the 72-hour thing that we call a rule, which isn't really a rule, exists in our conference, we'll do this on Saturday. Okay. So what has he done here? First of all, he's requiring it to go through the Rules Committee. And we've spoken at length about that, about how Kevin McCarthy blew up the Rules Committee by appointing right-wing nut jobs. By the way, I was reminded, you knew this, but I didn't, that one way to fix this problem of Kevin McCarthy blowing up the Rules Committee is you either replace members or add members.
Yeah.
However, whereas getting nominated to the Rules Committee is by conference, replacing or adding members is by the House as a whole.
Right.
Meaning, if you want to fix it, you have to have Democrats do it. Democrats have to cooperate.
That's true.
And Democrats are never going to cooperate because as a matter of principle, there is no possible way Democrats want a functioning Rules Committee, or are they going to help the majority pass a rule? They just don't ever, except in this one time where it turns out they might in order to get this aid package passed. But they're not going to cooperate by making the Rules Committee more functional for the rest of Congress, this Congress. So they're not going to replace Chip Roy and Thomas Massie and Ralph Norman and the other people on the committee who are obstructionists. They could, but they won't. And so what Mike Johnson is doing is saying, all right, I'm going to force a situation where the only way this rule passes is with Democrats voting for the rule for the first and only time in your lifetime. And that is a direct slap in the face to the House Freedom Caucus. And why is he doing it that way when he could have done a discharge petition?
That is a good question.
Not only that, since I'm slapping you in the face anyway, I'm going to make you vote on a Saturday.
Oh. Well, it's a good day to slap people.
Well, instead of like leaving so you can campaign, I'm making you stay here and do this on a Saturday. When I didn't have to, but I am.
Huh.
So like it.
Yeah. I could have. Oh, I suppose he could have said I could have done it earlier. Could have gotten it done on Friday, but you know how you all treasure the 72-hour rule.
Right.
You needed time to read these.
Right. So I'm looking at this and saying, what the hell is he doing? I like it. Don't get me wrong. I hope Democrats support the rule for the first time. I get that this is important. I get that it has to pass. Why is he doing it in a way that's hurting himself the most when he had other options?
I don't know. I'm trying to think, but I'm not certain. I guess it doesn't seem like it was momentous enough a difference, but it may be that like the discharge petition procedure takes even longer. They'd miss even more time, but I don't know.
Well, they're ready to do it. I mean, people have told both Punch Bowl and Politico Playbook, we're ready with the discharge petition if this fails. Like if Democrats don't support the rule, We're going discharge petition.
I'm just trying to think of it's
We're
been
ready.
so long since one succeeded. I forget the post-signature procedure and whether or not it can move faster than
Right, 'cause
this
it's supposed
rules
to all
committee
happen this
version.
week.
But okay, well, mixed feelings about depending on the minority Democrats to provide rules votes. I guess I would have said, well, I keep entertaining the idea of, well, if you want Democrats, say, to step in to defend you against the motion to vacate the chair, and you want to fix the way the Rules Committee works, it's not that you should rig it up so that we can occasionally decide to cast Democratic minority votes for a rule. You should just make the Rules Committee an evenly split panel. Forget that you've already lost control of the Speakers Committee. It's no longer the Speakers Committee, so don't worry about it. Make it like the Ethics Committee, which also doesn't work very well, but evenly split. The House is evenly split. Most committees should be evenly split, and then you won't have to engineer weird votes quite so often, or it'll simply... the rules will end up being a lot more like the compromise bills that you've brought to the floor under suspension of the rules.
Right,
but you'll be
Josh
able to do
Schroeder
it under
has
regular
a
order.
point to make about this.
Okay.
And he basically says, look, you could try a whole bunch of different things.
Okay.
But again, it runs into the same problem. This is his quote.
Oh.
Democrats won't help the Republican Rules Committee become more functional. It doesn't serve their interests because a functional Rules Committee is going to pass conservative legislation.
Not if you split it evenly. But, yeah, okay. That they haven't come around to that thought yet, I don't think. And it may very well be that not enough House Republicans would go for it as a change. But I don't know. Some of them probably will. And maybe there you just need all the Democratic votes plus, 5 or 6 Republicans who've had enough with these guys to say, sure, let's make it functional. It's not in the Democrats' interest for there to be a majority Republican functional Rules Committee, but it might not be so far misaligned to have a functional, evenly split committee. We'll see. Well, we'll never see. They'll never do it. Okay. Interesting.
Now,
to say the least. Yeah.
This is something that most normal people don't know anything about, and that's okay.
Boring. Yeah.
But what they will know about is whether or not something passes, and we'll find out this weekend if and when and how that happens.
Yes, and I'm sure
what
Republicans
normal
would love
people
to do it.
won't know is that there was an impeachment procedure in the Senate.
I barely know
I suppose if they were sworn in, you can call it a trial. It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
It's done.
Signed
and
a
so
book.
Republicans threatening to run on it and make Democrats answer for the fact that they didn't treat this seriously. I mean, that's what Axios has an article about. It's the stupidest, dumbest thing you ever heard. First of all, nobody ever heard of Mayorkas, if you're a normal person.
Yeah, mostly.
Secondly, nobody pays attention to something that took place over 3 hours in the Senate. And thirdly, if Republicans try to do that, Democrats have a very easy answer. Look, the Senate voted on a bipartisan bill that the House refused to accept. We did the work. You're the obstructionist.
Yeah.
That's it. Let me show you voting no.
Right. Well, yeah, that's an argument that can't go
ads,
anywhere.
I got more money than you do because you don't have any money.
But this is
Which,
good.
by the way, is going to be a theme we take over after the break. You Republican Party guys don't have any money because whatever money you do have, and we got more, and besides, whatever money you do have, you have to give to Trump anyway. In fact, you have to pay a tithe now. You have to pay 5% of any use of his image to him. So he can pay his legal bills. So,
like a surtax on
don't threaten
toilet
me
paper.
with ads. You can't do that.
And they're dumb ads.
You can't afford that.
This
They're
is
dumb
good.
ads to begin with, and you can't afford to put them on.
You dumb ads.
Yep. Put them on YouTube so like 3 people can watch it. Go ahead.
Right. Well, then you can make them a minute and a half long, and everyone will enjoy that. Gather your armies. I guess is where they're going with that one. I'm glad that the shoe is on the other foot, too, in the fight that we sometimes have over, we better not do this because people will find out. They'll be upset that we didn't do things, I don't know, the regular way, or that we did this audacious move. And finally they've come to the realization, Democrats and Chuck Schumer, that, a 3-hour maneuver in the Senate, nobody's going to know about this. They're not paying attention, just as they were saying. You can't change filibuster rules in the middle of the session. There'll be the American people will never accept it. The American people don't know what's going on. They don't care. They're not going to notice this, and they're certainly not going to notice this thing. That'd be a great debate to have.
Here's something they might notice. I just came across this, so I have to throw this in the time we have left.
Time to throw.
This is from Business Insider.
All right.
And the GOP person in question is Representative Tim Burchett of Tennessee.
I see.
I don't know if you're familiar with him. He's sort of a nutty guy.
I see his picture.
A GOP House member thinks his colleagues have been taped sleeping with Russian spies. And the quote is, "Next thing you know, you're in the motel room with them naked." I mean, like, that happens all the time, right?
Yeah.
Next thing you know, I was just on my way to vote on this
for more
Ukraine.
specifics.
Next thing you know, I find myself in a hotel room naked.
Yeah, right. I know. I was going to say oddly specific, but it's actually pretty generic. But I was hoping I was going to say, next thing you know, you're naked in a hotel room when there's empty 6-pack of Dr. Pepper and 3 what?
3 Russian spies. Right. GOP Representative Tim Burchett thinks his coworkers likely have been personally compromised. Why in the world would good conservatives vote for this crazy stuff?
Yeah.
Burchett is one of 8 Republicans in the House who voted to oust Kevin McCarthy. That's probably why you know his name at all.
Oh. So I don't know. Who does he think is sleeping with the spies?
He wouldn't name names, but he said it's the old honeypot, the Russian honeypot. They do that.
Yeah. At first it was kind of sensible, and then I realized, is this like a Freedom Caucus guy is saying that the relatively normie Republicans are the ones who are compromised because they want to give aid to Ukraine? No, wait a minute.
A member of Congress is at the bar and approached by a very attractive man or woman who laughs at all their jokes, and the next thing you know, you're in a motel room.
I guess so. Hi, everybody. It's me, David. Let's change things up from the old fundraising pitch for just a minute and talk instead about how you can be a part of our show. If you've got a smartphone or any other electronic recording device, why not sit down and record a segment for us? Read us an important article and give us your take. Or read one of your own original essays, or even just give us your commentary on something you'd like to share that's important to you. Then send the file to me at kagrox@gmail.com, and I'll try and work it into the show. Short segments, a few minutes in length, are easiest to fit in. And of course, I can't always guarantee that I'll be able to play everything, but if you've ever shouted at your radio or TV about something you wish was being covered, here's your chance to change that. Make the show your own. Send your submissions to me at kagrox@gmail.com.
Pay to be stupid, in other words.
Okay. Well, guess what? We're also back. Welcome back, everybody. I am not getting paid to be stupid, but I might do it for free.
Is that because you're not getting paid, or
no one will pay for the stupid, but it's just a project of passion.
Point of order, Mr. Chairman.
I'm determined to be stupid whether you pay me or not.
Okay, there we go.
Okay.
So we were talking about Tim Burchett accusing his colleagues of getting honeypot caught and sleeping with Russian spies. Dan Crenshaw doesn't go so far as to say it's about sex. Dan Crenshaw just says, they're probably getting paid, probably all Russian agents. What does he say exactly? I guess their reasoning is they want Russia to win so badly they want to oust the speaker over it. He's got to be talking about the Ukraine vote. I mean, that's a strange position to take, he says. And, I think they want to be in the minority, too. I think that's an obvious reality. I'm still trying to process all the bullshit.
Well, here, I've processed it for you.
That's bullshit. Pretty much. Go. So, what are Republicans thinking when they try so hard? I mean, really, they're going to the wall. Well beyond when they think they can get tit-for-tat trade-off. On this, they are absolutely refusing to fund Ukraine. Why?
Yeah.
Nobody's asking
I don't know
why.
Exactly.
They just report, well, they won't. Well, why? Well, we think the money should be sent to... That's not why. Why?
Yeah. There's a couple
How many of them are getting paid by the
thoughts,
Russians? Why don't you ask that?
I mean, it's so hard to believe that could actually be true because it seems like such a dumb movie plot, but they say
Donald Trump, they've known that for years.
Yeah, and at a minimum, I guess the easier explanation that they sometimes give is, well, they love Putin because he's an authoritarian and they love that, or something, or it'll help Trump get elected, but it's still it's unclear how it even really helps Trump get elected, unless it's just, it makes it look like Trump is running foreign policy and so therefore he looks strong and people love strong so they'll vote for him. That seems like a long walk too. And as silly as it sounds, the more direct and easily understood explanation is, yeah, they're paying them. And I mean,
yeah,
well,
Occam's razor.
That is, yeah. As crazy as it sounds, that's also the subject. You sent me the article the other day. I've seen people passing it around that's certainly begun. It's become something people are talking about openly. And I will remind everybody, what was the article I had on that you sent me? And you put it in maybe yesterday or the other day's Skype notes, and they're probably easier to find there. I should be looking for it. But everybody's kind of discussing that as a realistic possibility now. That used to just sort of be I don't know. Well, I guess it was weird enough that when it came up in the context of Trump and Dana Rohrabacher, when former Speaker, not then yet Speaker Kevin McCarthy said it, they were able to dismiss it as some kind. We were just joking. It was all a joke, you see. But even then, in that context, they were discussing the subject because the then Ukrainian Prime Minister had just come all the way to Washington, D.C. to warn them personally of the fact that it was, in fact, Russians bribing European politicians from Ukraine and westward, and it was likely to come to the United States, and he was come to raise that warning flag, and they missed all the warnings. And then when McCarthy accidentally brought it back to the subject at hand, they all said, well, let's all keep that a secret, because after all, we could win the election, even though the guy that's going to win the election has apparently been bribed by Russia. But we're for that, because I guess we might get a tax cut. It's very difficult to explain because it's hard to believe, I think, at the outset, one, that anybody would be just accepting bribes outright, and two, why would you trade the freedom of the United States of America for a tax cut? And the answer is, do you know what you get when you get tax cuts? Money. I love money. Oh, I just didn't think that there were such people, but there were.
Right. So the Trump trial is resuming. Judge Mershon admonished the press, stop writing so much about the jurors. It's supposed to be anonymous, and you guys are playing sleuth and putting all this stuff out there about who they are and what they do. Stop it.
Can he?
The quote is,
stop
it kind
them?
of defeats the purpose of that, as so much info is put out there. It's easy to identify the jurors.
Yeah, I mean, if you've seen it, the reporters are they're saying it in court, so I'm writing it down. He's 63 years old and has worked in Manhattan's only upside down and backwards bookstore in the between 67th and what? What are you talking? You're just telling us who the guy is.
Yeah, 70th, and I'm not saying which one of the employees it is, but he's bald.
Yeah, right.
But I'm not going to identify him.
Right, but if you do the rest of the sleuth thing, what can I do?
Oh, by the way, he also wears a kilt to work every day. But I'm sure you won't be able to identify him specifically.
Not because of me. It's because the court. I mean, those are questions that they ask the jurors to figure out who they are and whether or not they're hiding any biases. But yeah, I don't know. I mean, maybe it's something that they can impose some sort of gag order, but he hasn't, and I don't think he's going to. Right.
Now, another topic which
fight them.
I threatened to cover, but we didn't yesterday, which I really think is worth just at least mentioning.
All right. That's all.
And that is Biden's response to what happened with the Iranian drones and missile attack.
Yes.
Because it was extraordinarily effective.
The response was?
The U.S. response.
Okay, yes, all right, great.
What the U.S. did is it organized Arab countries, including Jordan, and Saudi Arabia for sure, probably UAE, a bunch of others, France, UK. I mean, they got a bunch of allies to work together in coordination to shoot down whatever was coming from Iran.
Oh, yes.
And got like 99% of them. But the point is they got cooperation for Jordan, for example, to use their airspace, and the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia.
What a kingdom.
To cooperate. And it was an extraordinary thing. It was as big an accomplishment, although over a much shorter period of time. I mean, it took hours to put together, and it was over in hours. But it was just
like amazing.
As an accomplishment as putting together the coalition that George H.W. Bush did to invade Iraq in the first place. Just an extraordinary accomplishment. How do you get the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia and Jordan to cooperate with Israel on a military venture to protect Israel? I mean, it's extraordinary. And it was done, and it was done relatively quietly. It's over, but, Biden knows what he's doing.
I guess he
does. He makes mistakes? Sure. I mean, Afghanistan was sort of a mess, but Afghanistan was a mess for like 20 years before he got there.
Yeah.
It was made even more of a mess by his predecessor, but it was a mess. No question about it. On the other hand, where does that experience? I mean, I know all these people. I mean, when I pick up the phone, they listen. Where does all that lead? This.
I guess so. I mean, it has.
Compare that with what would have been the response if Trump were president. He would have called Netanyahu and said, I don't know what's going on, but
what do you want to do? Yeah, let's bomb everybody. And, of course, they would have taken it as, we know what they would do, because John Bolton would have been there, and he would have said, yeah, right, you bomb Iran. That's what you do.
Yeah.
Duh. And,
no, Bolton would have said, this is our chance to bomb North Korea.
Oh. Well, maybe. I mean, finally you got your chance to bomb Iran. You're not taking it? Yeah,
well,
sure.
Look, this is how we approached it under W.
I guess, right. Just pick another country out of the hat and bomb them.
Afghanistan did this to us, so let's invade Iraq.
Yeah. Maybe.
I mean, John Bolton's got a track record here. I have an idea what he's thinking. But contrast and compare, and you get what you get. And so Biden brings some strengths to his position as president. He brings some track record. You may not love everything he does. You might not like his age. Most of the youth vote in this country doesn't like his age. What? And yet, despite that, a new Harvard IOP poll out today says, but most of them would vote for him. Most of the kids.
Well, all right. I hope so. That's good news because, everybody says terrible things about you kids. But this sounds good.
Right. So, let's see.
The end.
Let's see if I can find the latest on that IOP poll, because that's sort of pretty good.
All right.
Here we go.
What are we looking for?
New Harvard IOP poll of registered Gen Z voters, 18 through 29, as posted by Josh Kraushaar, because
that's what
he's a reliable person to go find those things. Biden 50, Trump 37. Biden lead among young white voters, 3 points. Among young non-white voters, 43 points. Biden lead among young women, 33 points. His lead among young men, 6 points.
Okay.
And if you add Kennedy gets 10, Biden gets 34, Trump gets 27. Kennedy won't be 10 at the end of this, and don't know is 22.
Yeah.
So if you're hearing that Biden is losing support among young voters, we'll see what happens.
He's losing vocal support.
32%. A third of them are either Kennedy or don't know. But that doesn't mean, A, they vote, or two, they'll vote not Biden.
Yeah.
We don't know that.
It's a ways to go. Kennedy will, have to go through his implosion. And then, and then ultimately, as November approaches and you begin to really contemplate how many things between now in the current situation in Israel, and presumably things don't resolve themselves all that neatly in Israel between now and November. So there's a lot of opportunity for people to find things that they don't like about the way that Biden reacts, but they also really have to contemplate the reality of how would Trump have dealt with this.
Well, this is a binary. When you get at the end, on January 6th,
they hate binary, though.
There's a third option, not voting or voting for a third party, but that fades.
Mm-hmm.
You're going to get a lot of it now. And then how is that vote going to break as we get closer to the election? They're either not going to vote, or the majority of them, maybe it's a small majority, but a majority of them will wind up voting for Biden, I would predict.
I certainly hope so, and we should continue to encourage them to do so.
And then we got these trials and other things that are going to happen. And so you have to step back and look at the big picture
trials.
Here, right?
Yeah.
And remember, it's only April, and we'll see. Public Notice is a place that Aaron Rupar runs.
Yeah.
And
the public
this is
noticing.
an article I just thought was fascinating. Why the Trump campaign is in deeper trouble than you think.
All right.
Simon Rosenberg, remember the hopium guy who was right about 2022, explains Trump's predicament and Biden's improving position.
All right.
Okay. Rosenberg brought up Trump's money problems. We've brought it up on the show. Yes. And discussed how difficult it will be for him to generate positive headlines when he's spending so much time in a New York courtroom for his criminal hush money trial, which is really a fraud trial.
Yes.
What's happening in national media right now is a growing sense that the Orange Emperor has no clothes, Rosenberg told me, Aaron Rupert. Where the media narrative started shifting on this race was when it became clear Trump was having fundraising problems and Republicans are struggling with money. At that point, it started dawning on people, maybe he's actually naked. There's a horrible thought you can't get out of your head.
Right.
I think the Trump campaign is in much greater trouble than conventional wisdom would indicate right now. Right? Because Rosenberg's view all along, as is mine, once the general election begins and the Biden campaign turns it on, we'll see his numbers improve, and that's what's happened. And that started at the State of the Union. So it wasn't the State of the Union that convinced people to start looking at Biden more positively. The State of the Union attracted Democratic eyeballs who then started to rally a little bit about Biden, and that's why his numbers have improved. If Trump's numbers go down, it's because of his trial. If Biden's numbers go up, it's because of the State of the Union. Separate things, but they combine. The Democratic Party has gained in the congressional generic ballot. The Senate polling is good for us all over the country, says Simon. Simon says. There's no Senate race right now where our candidates in trouble are underwater. Even in battleground states, we have polls where Biden leads in Michigan, Wisconsin, Pennsylvania. We have ones where he loses too. It's basically a tie. And we just had 2 polls showing North Carolina within the margin of error. Quinnipiac, a very reputable independent poll, shows Josh Stein, the Democratic candidate for governor, winning by 8 points, and Biden's down by 2. If those numbers are real, South Carolina's in play.
Okay.
All right. And at the same time, Simon Rosenberg also wrote elsewhere, his agenda is much further away, Trump's, from the electorate than before. His performance on the stump is significantly degraded, far more impulsive, erratic, disturbing. He wears more makeup than a drag queen. He keeps losing and getting humiliated in court. He's an adjudicated rapist. He committed one of the largest financial frauds in American history. I like that term. He's an adjudicated rapist.
Yes.
If you say he's a rapist, people will argue with you. If you say he's an adjudicated rapist, there's nothing to argue about. Go look it up.
Stupid
Here's
adjudicators. Yeah. All right. You're stuck with that one.
Yeah. I mean, he's an adjudicated rapist, superscript 1. Go click on it.
Yeah. And if you have to put Joe Biden on a ballot as a third-party candidate, that should be the name of his party.
Right. So, again, I go back to the Iran-Israel thing. Biden's a good president. You know, he is too old. No question about it. It'd be great if he were younger. It'd be great if, he were perfect. But, he is who he is. He's fine. And he's capable of doing the job, and he's doing the job fairly well. So should he be reelected? Well, I think he's earned it.
Yes. As upset as you might be about the fact that he'll grow older nonetheless.
Right, and there's other decisions he's made that I wish he wouldn't.
Yes. Sometimes you disagree.
But that happens.
Yeah, even with younger people.
Identify it, especially after the election, and then fix it. Yes. What's happening in national media right now is there's a growing sense the Orange Emperor has no clothes. Right? I already read that piece. Right. And then he says Trump's positive polls were a big factor preventing us from having an accurate understanding of the true nature of the race. If those evaporated, what was going to be left is a really ugly thing underneath. And that's what's happening.
All right. Is that what trials are doing to him? And the fact that
That's
he
what
has no
trials are
money?
doing to him. Yeah, but also him being on the campaign trail and just being completely incoherent and using word substitution and not making any sense.
Mm-hmm.
The other thing that's happened is that the success of Biden's presidency has caused many of the core indictments of him to evaporate. The economy is strong. It's not weak. You can argue about it. You can try to make a case. Inflation's down, not up. Jobs report out today, strong.
Yeah.
Essentially no change.
New
I know
job
it
at
went up a
NPR.
little bit last month. It's not Jobs Friday for the month. It's the weekly report. But inflation didn't go up a lot. Let's not exaggerate about what happened. The inflation uptick could have been within margin of error. Crime is not raging. It's actually plummeted. This whole Biden crime family story's collapsed.
Hasn't stopped Comer.
The election is slowly moving from being a referendum on Biden to a referendum on Trump, because that's what campaigns do. And when it becomes a referendum on Trump, they're not going to win because of his historic awfulness. Basically, Trump hasn't succeeded in getting new voters. And a lot of his older voters have died off.
Yeah, and some of them he killed, but, you know.
The election's actually changing now, but I also think the media narrative is changing. The media narrative will always trail reality by weeks or months, but you're beginning to see a shift. So, Simon says, I reference an article from Tegan Gotter's Political Wire, which I also subscribe to and I really enjoy, about Trump no longer being ahead and how the media narrative needs to change. Tegan is a consolidator of conventional wisdom in Washington. The problem for Trump is that if an understanding emerges that Biden's slightly ahead and they're struggling to raise money and he loses in court, Trump's going to be not strong. He's going to be weak. He's going to be a loser. He's not ready for prime time. And we are closer to that happening than I think people really understand.
Okay, good. It's a hard thing to understand because we've sort of been trained, perhaps by the media, in ways that make it impossible to imagine that a Republican is going to emerge with the overall vibe of being weak. That's not what the press usually tells us.
Right. Now, we talked a little bit yesterday about NPR. And Yuri Berliner and NPR's commitment to not really telling the truth because they're scared.
If we did, it was only minimal, I think. But
so
the story developed yesterday.
Background for that is that there is a conservative business editor, long term at NPR, named Yuri Berliner.
Okay.
And Yuri Berliner, however he pronounces it.
Ich bin ein Berliner, I believe.
Yeah.
He can
Ich bin ein conservative. Goes
He's a jelly donut.
Wait for it, Barry Weiss's site.
Oh.
To explain how he has noticed that NPR has just become too woke.
Oh. Well, sure.
NPR gets really upset about this because he still works there. And says, you really ought not to have been talking about your colleagues. Especially if it turns out what you're saying is wrong, but you shouldn't be talking about it at all.
Okay.
And Berliner gets very upset and he quits.
Oh. Okay. Well, bye.
So there's a couple of stories about that have been out.
For the
and
jobs
the media,
report.
who love to talk about themselves, have been talking about this.
Okay.
And one of the things that happened is that one of the longtime former reporters who used to work there said basically there's a whole lot of crap going on at NPR, and basically it's way too clubby and it's way too isolated from everybody else. Like everybody marries everybody else there.
Really?
And there's a lot of that going on, and it's really hard to make a criticism of a piece or an individual when the person across the table from you may be their, significant other. So it's really hard. It's a weird culture.
Okay.
And they are afraid of getting their funding cut. And so it's almost impossible to get them to tell the truth about what's going on because they basically had a policy that said that if Trump tells a lie, like in 2016, you have to find a lie that Hillary Clinton said and
then they used them
do both. And you have to both sides it. And one of the reporters said to one of the editors at a meeting, well, what happens if one side lies more than the other?
Yeah.
Silence.
Oh.
So that was the report.
You get divorced, I guess.
Today's piece is, what probably happened is I put them aside and we never got to it because we were talking about
Yeah,
other
I think
stuff.
that's what happened.
So NPR needs a serious critique, not a politically charged parting shot, says Margaret Sullivan today in The Guardian.
Okay.
It only took days for Yuri Berliner's publishing his fiery essay about his employer NPR to his suspension to his resignation in a blaze of bad faith glory. As Isaac Bailey put it, you knew martyrdom was coming. And that's a shame because every news organization could benefit from more self-scrutiny. And Berliner's a critique made some points worth pondering as he professed how much he loved the place. He called for diversity of viewpoints to counter NPR's pursuit of a diversity of viewpoints.
Well, you got to have a number of diverse approaches to diversity in order to truly.
Yeah, you need a bunch of diverse conservatives, Berliner was saying.
Sure.
Berliner charged the network was telling listeners how to think and has lost audience and trust because of a liberal agenda. No, actually, you've lost audience and trust because you're cowards, but that's another story.
Well, yeah.
He also made some shaky arguments that undercut his musings and seemed intended to signal his readiness to having his words weaponized by the right wing of American politics. Dan Kennedy at Northeastern University eloquently critiqued Berliner's complaints about Russiagate, Hunter Biden's laptop, the origins of the COVID pandemic. These are things that Berliner wanted NPR to heavily cover in a conservative way.
Well,
right? He
there's no
wanted
market
them to denounce Russiagate. He wanted them to cover Hunter Biden's laptop as if it were a real story, and he wanted to, do China's responsible for COVID. Whatever Berliner's good intentions may have been months and years ago, the way he went about his complaint last week made it clear he was no longer interested in constructive criticism. It was a parting shot. Mission accomplished. Woke NPR exposed, shouted one Fox News on-air banner. Liberal disinformation machine, Donald Trump said on social media. Defund NPR. As NPR's media reporter David Folkenflik, interestingly, Folkenflik said online, I have a contract that says I'm allowed to talk about this stuff whether my bosses like it or not.
Oh.
As NPR's media reporter David Folkenflik noted in his coverage, government funding contributes less than 1% to the national network's funding.
Yes.
However, local affiliates, which are extremely important in the diminishing local media landscape, depend on it more.
Oh. All right.
Now consider the venue Berliner chose. Free Press, a media outlet founded by Barry Weiss, anti-establishment provocateur.
Sort of.
Okay. Berliner surely knew when he went there his days at NPR were numbered. His resignation letter singled out the new CEO, Catherine Mayer, something of an odd choice for NPR since she came from tech rather than journalism. She has years-old social media posts which call Trump a racist and seem to shrug off the rioting during social justice protests. Meanwhile, it's no surprise that the anti-wokeness activist Chris Rufo, who has claimed that schools can be hunting grounds for sexual predators, is leading the call for Maher's ouster.
Yeah. And by the way,
the network staff, past and present, are understandably upset about having their journalism disparaged. One former NPR insider, Alicia Montgomery, that's the piece I was referring to, wrote in Slate about how NPR journalists were encouraged during the 2016 campaign to, quote, make sure that any coverage of a Trump lie was matched with a story about a lie from Hillary Clinton. When a colleague asked what to do if one candidate lied more, the response was silence. So there's the
no guidance there. It's just
and that
not
defensive
relevant.
tendency toward false equivalency is a critique worth pondering. Something else that needs to be acknowledged is the transformation of American politics, particularly the descent of the Republican Party into dysfunction and cult-like obeisance. The core editorial problem at NPR is, and frankly has long been, Montgomery wrote, an abundance of caution that crossed the border into cowardice.
Yes. So it's a legitimate critique in that sense. This other guy, Berliner, is it Berliner and not Berliner? I mean,
I don't know. I don't know how to pronounce it. I pronounce it both ways, so I can say, look,
we don't know. I mean, look, I don't know who the hell the guy is, and no one does. And no significant loss as far as I understand. He's like, what, the business editor or a business editor?
Or as Trump would say, it's an amazing thing. No one knows how to pronounce his name.
All right. He's getting less and less recognition.
Did you know that? I just learned that nobody knows it. He doesn't know how to pronounce his name.
Right. He told me I could pronounce it either way. And, I mean, NPR is just not. Well, I'm sorry. A lot of people love it. They listen to it. Whatever. I don't know those guys. I don't know the radio guys. I don't know the people that listen to it. NPR not a part of my life and never has been, and not because I've made some conscious decision to boycott their coverage. It just doesn't enter my world. I don't even know where I would find it on a radio dial.
There's some
to be honest.
Absolutely fantastic local programming stuff that I hear, especially out of the New York City public radio stations.
Okay. I mean, they do occasionally.
And then there's All Things Considered, which comes on in the evening. And as soon as I hear All Things Considered and I hear what they're covering, I think to myself, this really ought to be Some Things Considered. You really ought not to consider like all of it.
Just honestly, it would have been a better, more honest name, don't you think?
Yeah, because you don't really cover all of it.
No.
You only cover
How long
something.
is the show? I mean, come on. This show goes on forever, and I still don't get anything done. Yeah, I guess so. I don't know. NPR just not a factor for me, and so clearly the business reporting from NPR.
But can you imagine Kagro in the morning, afternoon, and evening?
Yeah, I can. Well, my family can. They'll tell you all about it. Right. That's why this house empties out when the show starts.
Anyway, that's it.
Okay.
For the week.
Fantastic.
I just thought that was interesting.
That is interesting, and a lot of people have been talking about it. And I don't know what to make of it because I don't have anything to add to it because I just NPR not.
Well,
for me.
So here's the abbreviated summary for today's show.
Yes.
Procedure matters. It matters in the House. It matters in the Senate. Things are coming to a head in both places, despite your lack of interest in procedure.
Tough luck.
And as far as the media goes, Trump isn't doing all that well, and they're getting around to covering it. And by the way, don't depend on NPR to do the best job of it.
Okay. Well, I won't. I promise you that. I feel about NPR the way normal people feel about procedure. What? I don't understand it, and I've never heard of it before. All right. We'll see you next week. All right. Well, welcome back to the Kagro in the Morning Show here on Netroots Radio. We're in a weird place in the music because I hit the wrong button today. I guess I should be thinking about maybe automating this, but I hit the 2-minute break button instead of the 1-minute break button. And I've done that before in the past and then forgotten to come back, and then you guys hear an extra minute of music and da-da-da. It makes for an editing nightmare later on, but never mind. We're back. And NPR is not. I don't know. That seemed like a vicious attack, a vicious attack on NPR, but it's really nothing. Honestly, I really don't know. It's just, I don't know. It's never appealed to me. And I get my news from elsewhere. I don't listen to the radio a great deal, certainly not for news, with the very rare exception of like the local all news station, which well, it's not a rare exception. It's actually every day. Except that it's my alarm that wakes me up, and I don't listen to it because I want to turn the alarm off as soon as possible. It's not because I hate to hear news; it's because I hate to hear anything at that point. Anyway, you hate to hear it, but you do. Anyway, what can I tell you? It's kind of a weird situation. I never really thought about what it might mean that they were all married to one another, but that adds some interest to it, I guess. All right. Well, let's see. Many things that I had tucked away in Pocket that, what happened to Pocket? Oh, I must have opened something in Pocket and it took me directly to the article and then I closed the article. All right. Well, back to Pocket in order to bring you the following. Let's see. Let's get rid of this one. Yes. As I guess, recap part of the beginning of the show about the Senate's dispensing with. They dispelled with the fiction that there was a Mayorkas impeachment. I'll read here the summary of Steve Bannon over at the Maddow blog at MSNBC, which is less about procedure and more about, I guess, the import of the whole thing. Under this headline, Gop, that party, the Gop, makes a weak pitch as the Senate rejects Mayorkas impeachment articles. Republicans, he says, are pretending that Democrats set a dangerous precedent by discarding Alejandro Mayorkas' impeachment without a trial, but he argues they have it backwards. And it's a good point, I think. So here we go. Now I will tell you that point. More than a month after House Republicans impeached Homeland Security Secretary Alejandro Mayorkas, and it is Well, I think it's in fact more than 2 months. And my recollection is that it's about February 13th that they actually passed these articles of impeachment. So if you're wondering, I don't know, I guess this undermines everything. Well, how could you not take it seriously enough to actually hold a trial in the Senate? Well, ask the prosecutors, who did not take it seriously enough to send it to the Senate for 2 solid months. So we're only, if there's a precedent, it's that we are regarding it as seriously as the House did. Really, more than anything else. But more than a month, in fact 2 months after they impeached him, despite the Gop's inability to find any evidence of him committing high crimes, the articles were finally delivered to the Senate on Tuesday. Republicans in the upper chamber responded by demanding a full impeachment trial. They didn't get one. As NBC News reported, the Senate Democratic majority dismissed both of the articles against the DHS chief just hours after the proceedings began. And the NBC description of it is quoted here. The speed of the impeachment trial was an embarrassing blow to Republicans who had threatened to gum up the Senate and delay the proceedings in a bid to highlight what they argue is Mayorkas' failure to secure the border and stop the flow of thousands of undocumented migrants at the border. However, Democrats who control the upper chamber easily dispensed with the pair of impeachment articles as well as several motions to adjourn the Senate. No description there in the NBC coverage as quoted about what the procedure actually was, just the outcome, the upshot of it all. And that's fine for our purposes now. There were a series of procedural votes, but ultimately it came to a relatively straightforward question. Did senators consider the impeachment articles against Mayorkas to be constitutionally legitimate? In votes that the Gop minority could not filibuster, it took 51 votes to reject the articles and end the process. Yesterday, both articles received 51 votes, with the entirety of the Senate Democratic Conference united. In fact, I think what he means is that both motions to dismiss the articles received 51 votes. And so it was done. And by the way, I guess if there's a precedent that's been set, it's interesting that Republican senators are angry about the precedent, but this article argues that there's a different precedent being set. But maybe the precedent being set here is, up until now, we've kind of lived with this. I think it was maybe a glib assessment, but it's kind of become constitutional precedent that Gerald Ford, who was killed by wolves, Gerald Ford, when he was Republican minority leader in the House, right? I think is when he said this, that, I guess they were arguing about whether or not Nixon, when did he say this? Jeez. Because the Nixon impeachment, when did he say this? I'll have to look it up. Now I'm confused about when. But what we should be focusing on is what he said. But now I'm going to be typing in Gerald Ford, impeachment, essentially, or high crimes and misdemeanors is what the House says it is, right? When it was a question of, I guess they were still talking about the impeachment of Nixon, because what other impeachment would they have been discussing? But yeah, I guess so. I mean, well, let's see. This is from the American Bar Association, but nearly half a century ago. I hope this is at the start of the article. Yeah. Then U.S. Representative Gerald Ford of Michigan offered this blunt assessment of what it takes to impeach a sitting federal official. Okay. This makes more sense. Like, well, why was he still in the House? By this time, he would have been vice president and wouldn't have wanted to comment on it this way. And even in the context of a Nixon impeachment, I guess, why would he say such a thing? And I guess the only thing I could have imagined then was him throwing up his hands and saying, there's nothing I can do to stop it. I disagree with this whole impeachment of Nixon, but high crimes and impeachment is what the House says it is. But that doesn't quite make sense. So don't worry about it, because, those of you who know the history are saying, no, it was a different impeachment. And it was. It was, in fact, then U.S. Representative Gerald Ford commenting on his 1970 attempt to impeach U.S. Supreme Court Justice William O. Douglas. What are you going to impeach him for? Well, I guess he says, an impeachable offense is whatever a majority of the House of Representatives considers it to be at a given moment in history, said Ford, who later, of course, became vice president and then president after President Richard Nixon resigned rather than face impeachment himself. So it was a totally different impeachment, but it was still an odd statement to make, if only because, well, the impeachment is whatever the House of Representatives says it is, and you're in the minority, and you're not going to be able to tell, you're not going to be able to get the House, very likely, to agree with your definition of impeachment. But then it did, in fact, become the precedent, and it's been quoted several times since when impeaching, I don't think it really came up when impeaching Nixon, because, they didn't really need much justification. And even Republicans in the House at that point were in agreement, as were Republican senators, that this was a proper impeachment. But then later on, the next controversial impeachment, or truly controversial impeachment, was that of Bill Clinton, and Republicans reminded everybody, that's a legitimate impeachment article. Impeachment is whatever the House says it is. Or at least that's what the last Republican to comment on it said. So it's not very hard to imagine then current Republicans in the 90s, relying on previous Republicans, Gerald Ford in the 70s. But anyway, where were we going with this? Yes, that it has since then been essentially the precedent, as dumb and offhand a remark as it was, that impeachment is whatever the House says it is, which is an extremely odd position for senators to want to agree with. Ordinarily, I think they view things as, the Senate ought to have some say in things, don't you think? And of course, your role is as a juror. That's true. So you are approaching it from a slightly different angle. But you'd think, I would have thought that all that time, ever since we decided to accept that as a non-stupid formulation, very often in context at the time, whatever Gerald Ford was saying was often widely regarded as relatively dull and dumb. But he was kind of right about it in the sense that, if they adopt articles of impeachment, then that's it. They have done that. And now even Mitch McConnell, who probably considers himself something of a more sophisticated operator than Gerald Ford ever was, is trying to argue, we're stuck with it. But the Senate very rarely accepts the idea that they're stuck with anything. And half of their existence is dedicated to outmaneuvering the House. So it's a weird formulation for senators to have been accepting for all of these years, that impeachment and high crimes, they are what the House says they are. And for the first time, the Senate now says, we have a say in what high crimes are. Not just, you've said that this is a high crime and we accept that it's a high crime, we just refuse to convict that person of the high crime. But that they will actually say, we actually think you're wrong. Impeachment isn't what the House of Representatives says it is at any given time. It's also something that the Senate has a say in. We will conduct a trial, but we'll also entertain pretrial motions to dismiss the charges because we think they don't rise to the level that warrants our attention. Impeachment, high crimes and misdemeanors, now, maybe they've set this right for the first time in 50 years. It is what the House and the Senate say it is. If they both say it, you impeach and remove a president. If they disagree, then that's the end of it. There haven't been high crimes and misdemeanors committed here. No one has ever been convicted, no president so far has ever been convicted of it. And that remains the case. And now no cabinet member has ever been impeached and convicted. And that remains the case. The Senate always had a say in it. They just decided to frame it a little bit differently. Not, well, there's nothing we can do about the fact that he's been indicted. We'll try him and just find him not guilty. But rather that they say, we're not even going to get to that point. We understand that the House has said what they've said. We just don't agree. And we don't have to be forced to agree. I think that's an excellent point. And we haven't even gotten to the point that Steve Bannon is making about this thing. Maybe we should have given him the benefit of the doubt. Maybe that seems like a pretty solid point to me. But as it turns out, it might be Steve Bannon's point. But that doesn't mean I got it from him because I haven't read his article yet. Let's finish that. So, where were we? The case against the Homeland Security Secretary, in other words, has run its course, ending in predictable fashion, the dismissal of the 2 counts. But before the political world moves on, it's worth considering just how weak the Republicans' talking points were. To hear Gop senators tell it, A, the Democrats' rejection of the case against Mayorkas reflects a lack of seriousness about border policy. Well, no. But he takes care of that one, I think. And B, Democrats have set a dangerous new precedent. It's not dangerous. It's a good one, I think, by refusing to hold an impeachment trial in response to the House-passed articles. Now, by the way, before I go on, there is a situation in which this assessment that this is a decent outcome could come back to haunt you, could come back to bite you in the ass, as they say. And that is, of course, if a Democratic House impeaches a Republican official at some point for something that Democrats considered absolutely to be a 100% legit, solid charge of high crimes and misdemeanors. And Republicans in a, let's say, it's not hard to imagine, in a craven display of partisan politics, simply refuse, they simply redefine the activity as not only a high crime or misdemeanor, but probably not even a crime at all. And so therefore, based on the precedent of the Mayorkas impeachment, we will dismiss it outright without a trial. And we say, how dare you? But I mean, you're still back to the formulation of that makes it, unfortunately will make a great deal of sense. Even then, the House can indict and the court, we think of the Senate. Well, we're told that the Senate will sit as a jury, and the jury ordinarily doesn't have the opportunity to dismiss the case. But this is a weird hybrid jury, which also controls procedure during the trial, and that's not something that a normal criminal jury gets to do either. You're talking about a very unique body. But you could easily have written the rules in the judiciary, in the judicial branch, such that juries did weigh in on case dismissals. It just didn't make any particular sense. But anyway, here we have a set of rules in which 2 bodies that both adopt their own rules of procedure and can define things like impeachment as whatever the hell they want. The Senate has just as much right to do that as the House has to do, and it was a dumb thing to let things rest for 50 years on the idea that impeachment, and how does he say it? I mean, impeachment is an impeachable offense is whatever a majority of the House of Representatives considers it to be at any given moment in history. That is still true right up until the part where they walk the papers across to the Senate and hand it to them. And it is absolutely within the Senate's prerogative to say, we view this differently. Not, we view this as a legitimate indictment, but simply refuse to convict, but that we have something to say about the legitimacy of the indictment. We refuse to treat it as such. We refuse to receive it as such. That is their prerogative, and no one is in a position to gainsay them on it. Not the judiciary. You didn't follow the rules that we would have followed in our branch. Right? It's because we're not your branch. And it would be pretty obviously a political question for you to try to take this thing up and say we did it wrong. Not the House, because the House is the House. You had your say, now we're going to have ours. And not the executive branch either, because, of course, they were the defendants in all of this, so they really should have very little to say about it. And should be happy as well. But, yeah, It never really made any sense to say that impeachable offenses are what the House says they are. Except insofar as we remember that impeachment is merely indictment. It's the analog of an indictment, and that conviction is up to the Senate. So impeachment isn't impeachment as the whole process. The charge and the conviction and removal is not up to the House. The Senate can absolutely roadblock things, and it's about time, I guess, that they said they did. Maybe this is a historical correction. So where were we here? The political world moves on, right? Worth considering that the Gop talking points about Democrats not being serious about the border is just dumb for other reasons. And B, that Democrats have their talking point. The Democrats have set a dangerous new precedent by refusing to hold an impeachment trial. It doesn't make any difference whether our friends on the other side thought he should have been impeached or not. He was. That's the position taken by Mitch McConnell. And by doing what we just did, we have in effect ignored the directions of the House, which were to have a trial. No evidence, no procedure. This is a day that's not a proud day in the history of the Senate. But that's open to question, right? Have we ignored the directions of the House? No, the direction of the House, really, the House can direct you is, you must receive our message. After that, the procedure is up to you. And so they just decided not to do it. Anyway, Republican Josh Hawley of Missouri also added, so this will be the precedent going forward. Impeachment as a constitutional matter is effectively dead now. They just killed it. Well, this charge, anyway, they've now set a precedent that, what do you know? The precedent is the Senate can adopt its own rules of procedure. What a strange new precedent that is. Well, anyway, here's Steve Bannon on a few things he has to say. First, at no point in recent months have Gop lawmakers in either chamber treated this process with even a hint of seriousness. So that talking point should be dismissed right away. The entire impeachment ordeal, he says, was a cheap stunt, and the Senate Republicans all but admitted that they wanted a trial as part of an election season public relations gambit. Second, if Gop officials want to talk about which party is serious about border policy, perhaps they can explain why they were so quick to kill the bipartisan border plan that they requested. Third, many of the Senate Republicans who insisted that the institution was required to conduct a full impeachment trial in response to House-backed articles are the same Senate Republicans who tried to forego a full impeachment trial in response to House-backed articles 3 years ago after Donald Trump's second impeachment. So that's kind of a good point, too. I'm sure they would answer that by saying, you were trying to impeach someone who is no longer in office. But we also know from the William Belknap impeachment that you absolutely can do that. And by the way, that's the only other impeachment that exists of a cabinet official, and that went forward, too. So, theirs is kind of a weak point on that one as well. Not to mention the fact that most impeachments that have happened in our history are judicial impeachments and members of the judiciary. In other words, people sitting on the federal bench, and almost all of them are conducted in committee and deemed to have had such a trial then. And, you can get away with a different kind of trial. They do it all the time. They were just sort of hoping people wouldn't notice that. As for the idea that Senate Democrats have set a dangerous precedent by dismissing impeachment articles without a trial, the Gop appears to have this backwards. The impeachment crusade against Mayorkas was itself a radical and unprecedented scheme. Republicans sought evidence of high crimes, failed to find any, and decided to nevertheless impeach a sitting cabinet secretary without cause for the first time in American history. As regular readers know, the Republicans' impeachment hearings against the DHS secretary were a joke, and the impeachment effort was condemned by constitutional experts from the left, right, and center, senators from both parties, some prominent voices in conservative media, and former Homeland Security secretaries from both Democratic and Republican administrations said as much. All linked herein, the real risk would have been to legitimize the Gop's abuse, setting a far more dangerous precedent. Yes, the Senate's rejection of the articles was unprecedented, but it was a first-of-its-kind response to a first-of-its-kind abuse. So, a pretty good summation of what went on there, plus it gave us the opportunity to embellish things a little bit more, and I think drive the point home, well, using that many more minutes anyway, even if the argument was not necessarily that much better. Let's see, got a couple other notes here from Greg, just to see what's going on here. Has any of this, one of these has got to be blown up in order for me to see. Here we go. Big day for British history references on Capitol Hill, apparently, as Jared Moskowitz has proposed renaming Marjorie Taylor Greene's office after Neville Chamberlain. How interesting is that? Okay. I guess in an effort to highlight her weird and otherwise inexplicable, except for Occam's razor telling us that she's being paid or otherwise compensated by the Russians and taking her weird stance on Ukraine. But it's legit. You can do this. Amendment to H.R. 8035. I don't know what they're considering, but 8035. At the end of the bill, before the short title, insert the following, a new section that resolved that 403 Cannon House office building be renamed the Neville Chamberlain Room. I imagine that's not going anywhere, but basically saying, okay, he regards Murdery Trader Green as the Neville Chamberlain appeasement equivalent. Although I don't think anybody thinks that Neville Chamberlain was being paid by the Nazis. So, all right. Well, it's an interesting move anyway. And good trolling. Okay, let's see. We'll get this thing out of the way here and look at the rest of what he's sent along. Something from Punchbowl News. Okay. Some additional money situation. The DCCC raising $45.4 million in the first quarter, outpacing the NRCC by $12 million. The DCCC's best quarter of the 2024 cycle includes a $21.4 million March haul. DCCC has $71.1 million on hand. NRCC $55.9 million on hand. Still a considerable sum, but considerably less than Democrats, and, money seems to be important in these situations. There was, once again, opened up an article and lost pocket along the way. I have to remember to, open these things in different tabs. Something in the money situation somewhere I have around here, I thought, did I not put this away? Here we go. Politico's report from Alex Eisenstadt, who points out, I guess, essentially that Trump has now, by necessity, but also by his plain desire, turned Republican fundraising into a kickback operation, a kick-up operation, not far removed from the way the mafia operates, although if you prefer to make it a non-criminal, then maybe multi-level marketing. Trump asks campaigns, or rather Trump campaign asks for a cut of candidates' fundraising when they use his name and likeness. And this is outside of the other voluntary sharing agreements of joint fundraising committees with states and with the RNC. So really dipping his hands in every possible pool of money. The campaign sent this letter as the former president is struggling to close a fundraising gap with Biden. Here's the deal, insofar as I can squeeze it in before the next break. Former President Donald Trump's campaign has found a new way to press for badly needed cash. In a letter received by Republican digital vendors this week, the Trump campaign is asking for down ballot candidates who use his name, image, and likeness. Here's a picture of me with Trump. I'm a supporter of Trump. Trump endorses me. They have asked fundraising appeals to give at least 5% of the proceeds to the Trump campaign. So he wants essentially to take a skim of the fundraising of any candidate who uses his image, name, or likeness in their own campaign. Beginning tomorrow, We ask, anyway, that all candidates and committees who choose to use President Trump's name, image, and likeness split a minimum of 5% of all fundraising solicitations to Trump National Committee, JFC. JFC, that's Joint Fundraising Committee, not Jesus effing Christ, though you might go in that direction too. Hi everybody, it's me, David Waldman. Yes, the same guy who interrupts you all the time. Interrupting you one more time, just to tell you again, another reminder that your contributions are what keep this show on the air, and patreon.com, patreon.com, is still among the easiest ways to make the sustaining subscription donations that keep us afloat. Are you ready for the pep talk about how our Patreon campaign is still going strong and growing? Well, too bad. Yeah, the plain fact is we actually are headed in the wrong direction, and whereas we once had about 175 monthly patrons, we're now actually down below 150. Time to recruit some more. Not exactly the kind of news I wanted to share, but there it is. For those of you in a position to support the show, patreon.com does make it easy to make those secure, recurring monthly contributions to do so. Patreon.com/KagroX gets you straight to our donation page. We've been through a lot together. The worst of the pandemic, we hope. The worst of the insurrection, we hope. So go ahead and treat yourself. You don't need an excuse. Give yourself the gift of a little something you enjoy in life. Support the show. And of course, if you happen to prefer using PayPal or even the Square Cash app, we're up and running on those options too. So thanks again, everyone, for all your support. We couldn't, or at least shouldn't, do it without you. Hope you'll be on board soon too. Thanks for all your support. All right, welcome back now to the Kagro in the Morning Show here on Netroots Radio. Many things still breaking as we speak. A lot of people covering the continuing jury selection at the TFG trial and some developments there. We'll see if we get a chance to share them. But first, back to the latest, mafia kick-up situation happening over on the Republican campaign side. Beginning tomorrow, the Trump campaign let everybody know just the other day, which I guess means today. We ask that all candidates and committees who choose to use President Trump's name, image, and likeness split a minimum of 5% of all fundraising solicitations to Trump National Committee, JFC. And that I know about how we fade out on the live stream as we go to break, and I wondered how much of it got across. JFC, that's not Judea fried chicken or anything like that. And it's not Jesus effing Christ either. Joint Fundraising Committee is what they're talking about. But that wasn't an exclamation about or an idea of what would people say when they read this letter. But so what this means is if I think it's pretty obvious on its face, right? If you use Trump's name, face, or likeness, and who knows how strictly they'll interpret that, even if you just say in a campaign brochure, I fully agree with President Trump that we need to secure our borders. Is that enough to then trigger a 5% tax on all of your fundraising? And it's voluntary, but how voluntary? Well, let's read on. This includes, but is not limited to, sending to the House file, prospecting vendors and advertising. Trump, that doesn't mean too much to any of us, really, but basically asking for the 5% cut. But here it goes on. Trump co-campaign managers Susie Wiles, remember we've mentioned her name a couple of times on the show, and Greg's brought her up occasionally, the Florida operator, plus Chris LaCivita, both teamed up to write this letter dated April 15th, appropriately enough for tax day. They added, this is the interesting part. So it's all voluntary, I guess. But here's how voluntary it is. Any split that is higher than 5%, let's say if I ask you to send 5% and you send, if you do the bare minimum and you should wear your 15 pieces of flair, what would you think of someone who does the bare minimum, right? Any split that is higher than 5% will be seen favorably by the RNC and President Trump's campaign. and is routinely reported to the highest levels of leadership within both organizations. In other words, if you want a brown nose, and everybody wants to brown nose Trump, I guess, even though you get, some of it will be orange, some of it will be, you're going to end up coming out of there like a chocolate candy corn. Holy moly. Anyway, sorry about that, but it's true. Anyway, what they're saying is, you could send us the 5%. That's the minimum we require. But if you really want to get in our good graces, if you send more than 5%, anybody who sends more than 5% will report to the man himself that you went out of your way to send even more money. And by golly, if you send 10%, if you send 15, if you send 20, 25%, 100% of all of your fundraising to us, we will tell the big man exactly what you did. You'll get invited to a Pervalago party. He'll say wonderful, wonderful things about you. Very tremendous, beautiful congressperson. This particular person is. His name is Ben Dover, I am told. I'm reading it off a card, but that's, I just want everybody, I'm reading it off a card so they get the name right. Everyone should know what a wonderful guy he is. By the way, also a huge, huge, huge contribution. Many thanks to the congressional candidate I.P. Freely. Yes, apparently the case. Running for Congress at long last. Everyone knows, fantastic author. Perhaps you've read some of his books. Wrote, as I recall, something on China. Anyway, the point is, so now you'll get like gold stars and your name mentioned to the big TFG if you do more. You get the idea? So, I don't know. We'll see whether that spurs any additional but this is basically like being caught out buying your blue check on Twitter back in the day when they wouldn't just force it on you. Anyway, Trump officials insisted that the purpose of the 5% request was not to raise money for themselves, but rather to dissuade scammers from using Trump's brand without his permission and diluting his ability to raise cash, which is, of course, a fantastic message. What you're saying is you sent this to every congressional campaign, and you're telling them there's a 50-50 chance that you might just be a scammer. And we know it, which is great because we want scammers in Congress if I'm going to be president. But, yeah, anyway, no, it is what it looks like, if you ask me. It may also dissuade scammers, but scammers aren't going to voluntarily send you the 5%, and you're not going to be able to enforce that 5% against them either. So there's no chance that it's really about scammers. You sue scammers. You don't ask for a voluntary 5% contribution. Although that might be where you settle later on. But you would probably settle for much greater if it's a scam. Why not disgorge all the profits? That's an interesting thing, too. Trump has a soft spot for scammers. Rather than disgorge all of the illicit gains, we'll only take 5%. The letter comes as Trump is struggling to close a fundraising gap with President Joe Biden. Biden's campaign has said that it has raised over $190 million, more than double what Trump has taken in, and probably about as much as he's siphoned out along the way. Trump's campaign has acknowledged that it will be outraised by Biden, though it has been looking to make up ground with large and small donors alike. It's useless information. By asking Republican candidates to break off a chunk of their own proceeds, the Trump campaign would enlarge its bank account. Well, by getting compliance with them, it would enlarge its bank account. The letter was sent the same week Trump's hush money trial began in New York. That trial, of course, expected to last at least 6 weeks and will greatly hinder the former president's ability to hit the campaign trail with just 7 months left before the November election. Down-ballot Republican candidates and committees have long used Trump in fundraising appeals, recognizing that he has support among the party's small-dollar fundraising base. But in the letter, Wiles and LaCivita reiterated their request that Republicans avoid using certain language and tactics while using Trump's name, image, and likeness. The letter, for example, asks the candidates not speak on behalf of President Trump. mention of the president's family without their consent or of the consent of the campaign, or impersonate President Trump or his campaign. Oh, well, I'm going to continue to do that, and I'm not going to pay either. After taking over the Republican National Committee last month, the Trump campaign and family, in fact, established a joint fundraising committee with the RNC that allowed for the campaign to take in checks in excess of $814,000. I'm not even certain what that's actually about. The letter warns that any vendor whose clients ignore the guidelines mentioned above will be held responsible for their clients' actions, and that repeated violations will result in the suspensions of business relationships between the vendor and the Trump National Committee, JFC. This includes list rental agreements, which is a big way for the vendors, that is to say, the consultants, to make money above and beyond advising their clients. List rentals is a big profit center for these people. So the threat is, if we find out that you are using Trump's name, likeness, or image, or what have you, whatever the phrasing was that they used for it, for your candidates or whatever, in any manner whatsoever, and you're not paying the tithe, then we're going to cut you off from all contracts and we're going to stop buying your lists, among other things. And, of course, then spread the word that no other candidate should do it either, or that we'll unendorse that candidate or attack that candidate. The campaign has made similar requests in the past. Last year, the Trump campaign released another letter warning that Trump might not endorse candidates who were using firms that sent out Trump-centered fundraising appeals without the campaign's consent and now payment to them. In 2021, Trump's political operation sent cease and desist letters to the RNC. Wow. The National Republican Senatorial Committee and the National Republican Congressional Committee, demanding that they stop using Trump's name, image, and likeness in fundraising messages. Danielle Alvarez, so by the way, just before I'll conclude the piece so that we can get that done and we can circle back. Danielle Alvarez, a Trump campaign spokesperson, did not address the request that Republicans give 5%. Well, then why are we talking to her? But in a statement, she said it's important to protect small dollar donors from scammers that use the president's name and likeness. She did mention it. She just gave the dumb excuse for using it that nobody believes. Okay, but to double back, the fact that the campaign has made similar requests in the past and that they gave cease and desist letters to the RNC and the NRSC and NRCC, both. Now, of course, they've taken over the RNC. But what they're saying is that they would no longer allow the RNC to buy lists from people who violate the policy. But the RNC in the past has violated the policy, apparently, as well as the NRCC and NRSC. But presumably they won't sue themselves now, or they won't. Well, this is part of the beauty of having taken over the RNC with a Trump at the helm. So now the question is, if the RNC, which is tasked with, basically backing the national campaign, which will have Trump at the head of its ticket, every time they print something or use something with Trump's likeness or image, they're going to have to take 5% of whatever they gain from it and send it directly to Trump. But that's only if they want to do the bare minimum. This is just another way of siphoning off money. And ordinarily, you would think the RNC would say, no, look, we already exist for your benefit. We are not going to also send you the money that we raise to do our job, which is to support you. But now that Lara Trump is at least arguably, at least partially in charge there, and then the other person who's partially in charge is a total Trumper, they're just going to find another way. Every time that they send out a fundraising appeal that has anything to do with Trump, they're going to send 10% of it to get in his good graces over to the Trump, to his direct control. It's just another way to siphon off money. It's really rather devious and inventive, except, it's supposed to signal the doom of their party organization. So when is that going to happen? I'm waiting for that to happen. And, we keep our fingers crossed. All right, let's see. A couple other things, many other things that we're supposed to get to. We're falling way behind because a lot of these things become more and more complicated. But let me share this with you. There's now that the House is supposed to be moving forward. We were a little bit confused in talking to Joan on Tuesday. It was a little unclear. All right, exactly what is this proposal? We're hearing rumors that Mike Johnson is going to have a package of 4 different bills, but they may or may not all be tied together in a single rule, even if they're not tied together in one legislative vehicle. But it's confusing, and nobody knew exactly what he was proposing here. And now the Capitol Hill reporters are beginning to get a look at things and try to explain what exactly is happening. The Guardian has this piece here. Let's open it up. Jonathan, get the pop-up out of the way here. Yerushalmi. I don't know where they put the pronunciation there, although it's clearly derived from Jerusalem, but the Yerushalmi, the surname. So that tells you something. But okay, we didn't mean to get hung up on that. We were going to talk about the substance of the article, the explainer article from The Guardian, Mike Johnson aid bills. What is the U.S. Speaker's plan for Ukraine and Israel, and will it pass Congress? Still not clear. Let's see whether Jonathan, a newcomer to the Jonathan Corner, can clear it up. House Speaker Mike Johnson has unveiled his plans to pass foreign aid for Ukraine, Israel, and the Indo-Pacific, Taiwan, and others, with a vote likely on Saturday for reasons outlined earlier by Greg. So let's tie this all together. U.S. House Speaker Mike Johnson has said long-awaited votes for aid on Ukraine, Israel, and the Indo-Pacific will take place as soon as Saturday, putting the senior Republican on a collision course with members of his own party. At stake is $95 billion of U.S. security assistance that has been in limbo for months amid fierce objections from far-right Republicans for reasons unknown. Right? Johnson's decision to push ahead with the votes also puts his own job at risk, with at least 2 Republicans threatening to put forward a motion to remove him just 6 months after he assumed the job. How did we get here? Some reminders, I think we all remember. Congress has been frozen for months in its efforts to approve military aid for Ukraine due to the growing opposition among Republicans. We could maybe address how that's happening at some point in the near future. The voices of isolationist Republicans, that's very generous to say that they're isolationist, as opposed to political union with Russia to own the globalists. They're not isolationists. They want to take their instruction from other international actors. It's just they want to take instruction from Russians to have the U.S. sit on the sidelines, not because they're isolationist per se, but because they want to interfere on behalf of the Russians. But okay. Traditionally, we would say they were isolationists, but this is not a traditional situation. Just wanted to point that out. The language matters. The voices of isolationist Republicans have grown louder, bolstered by former President Donald Trump, who has said foreign aid should be structured as a loan, not a giveaway, while calling into question America's commitment to its NATO allies who are committed to Ukraine's defense. Efforts to pass legislation that would secure military assistance for Ukraine hit another barrier in 2023 as some Republicans began to insist that the foreign aid bill must be tied to addressing the needs of the U.S.-Mexico border, where arrests for illegal crossings have hit record highs, which is to say that enforcement has hit record highs. But never mind that. In February, the Senate voted to block the advancement of a bill that guaranteed foreign aid while also providing new powers to shut down the border and expedite deportations. Said they wanted that. We gave it to them. They said, oh, no, we didn't want to actually catch that car, too. We've had enough of catching cars. Later that month, the Senate passed a bill that provided $95 billion of wartime aid to Ukraine, Israel, and other American allies, but contained no provisions about the U.S. border. Despite this legislation passing with broad bipartisan support in the Senate, Johnson continually refused to bring the Senate bill to the floor of the House, and without the House voting to approve it, the bill remained stalled up until this week. Why isn't foreign aid what the Senate says it is at any given time? Because we have 2 houses of Congress, and that's that. How do these new bills differ from those the Senate approved? On Tuesday, Johnson unveiled his proposals, which involved holding votes on 3 separate funding packages for Ukraine, Israel, and the Indo-Pacific. And that's not insane, right? As well, I mean, I don't know whether it means anything or how it impacts the prospects for passage, but it's not out of those, it's completely, well, where's my cuckoo button? It's not completely nuts to say, they are different things. They are usually packaged together to sort of increase the pressure to pass all. If you want to jeopardize all of them just to say, I object to one of them, that's your business. But people feel jammed by that. People have been calling for doing things separately in separate bills for a long time. Okay, so where were we here? Yes, right. Holding votes on 3 separate funding packages for the 3 different areas, as well as a 4th bill that contains other Republican foreign policy proposals. And that includes what? Maybe border, maybe TikTok, maybe something else. The package totals $95.3 billion in spending, which matches the total that the Senate passed in February, but contains a few differences designed to win over some House conservatives. Aid to Ukraine would total about $61 billion, but more than a third of that amount would be dedicated to replenishing weapons and ammunition systems for the U.S. military. The U.S. military. Okay. The $13.8 billion provided to Ukraine for the purchase of weapons from the U.S. is roughly the same as the previous Senate bill. The main difference between the 2 packages is that the House bill provides more than $9 billion in economic assistance to Ukraine in the form of forgivable loans. The Senate bill included no such provision seeking repayment. But if it's just a wink at repayment, maybe it's just as good. The idea of structuring the aid as a loan is a key Trump policy proposal and is supported by a number of Republicans. Johnson says the House bill package also includes a requirement for the Biden administration to provide a plan and a strategy to Congress for what it seeks to achieve in Ukraine. The plan would be required within 45 days of the bill being signed into law. House Republicans frequently complain that they have yet to see a strategy for ending the war. Well, I don't know if that's really up to us, but okay. Aid to support Israel and provide humanitarian relief to Gaza comes to more than $26 billion. The money dedicated to replenishing Israel's missile defense systems totals about $4 billion in both the House and Senate bills. Some of the money allocated to Israel will also cover the cost of U.S. military operations responding to recent attacks. Johnson has said his package for the Indo-Pacific will include about $8 billion to counter China and ensure strong deterrence in the region. We'll see. The overall amount of money is about the same as the Senate bill, with a quarter of the funds used to replenish weapons and ammunition systems that have been provided to Taiwan, which is to say that it ends up in American contractor pockets. Why has Johnson chosen to advance the aid packages now? After Iran's unprecedented weekend attack on Israel, the White House and top Democrats and Republicans in the Senate called on Johnson to approve the Senate's aid package. Thanks, Iran. On Sunday, he told Fox News that Republicans understood the necessity of standing with Israel. That's the quote. At the same time, the U.S. aid to Ukraine has stalled. Kiev's position on the battlefield has reached a perilous position. Insufficient ammunition and dwindling air defense missiles have left the country's defenses exposed. In Washington, alarm has grown at the deteriorating situation, and at a hearing on Wednesday, Pentagon leaders testified that Ukraine and Israel both desperately need weapons. On Wednesday, Johnson told reporters, "History judges for what we do. This is a critical time right now." It always is. According to reports in the Washington Post, Johnson's opposition to Ukraine aid has changed since he became speaker and began to receive intelligence briefings more frequently. That does happen. Will the aid packages pass? Johnson's attempt is attempting to corral a divided Republican Party with the slimmest of majorities in the House. He's not going to do that. He'll be depending on Democrats. With a number of Republicans avowedly committed to opposing the bills, the Speaker will be reliant on support from Democrats to push the legislation through. House Democratic leader Hakeem Jeffries has said his plan to gather Democrats for a meeting, or his plan is, I guess, to gather them on Thursday morning. That's now. Maybe they're doing it right now to discuss this package. Our top-line commitment is ironclad, he told reporters. We are going to make sure we stand by our Democratic allies in Ukraine, in Israel, in the Indo-Pacific. The proposals have already received a ringing endorsement from Joe Biden, who has said he will sign the packages into law immediately should Congress pass them. A number of Republicans have indicated that they will support them as well. In an effort to satisfy conservatives in his own party, Johnson said he will hold a separate vote on a border security package. However, some Republicans have already denounced the plan as insufficient because they, too, can never take yes for an answer. At least 2 Republican House members have threatened to try to oust Johnson if he goes ahead with the votes. Far-right Congresswoman Murdery Trader Green was joined by Thomas Massey of Kentucky in calling for Johnson to resign, but so what? I want someone that will actually pursue a Republican agenda and knows how to walk into the room and negotiate and not get tossed around the room like some kind of party toy, whatever that means, Green said. But she added that she would not move on the motion to vacate Johnson as Speaker before the vote on foreign aid. So she doesn't actually want to prevent that vote from happening. She probably makes some sense. If that's what she wants to use as the excuse or the threat is, if you do this thing, then I will do it, then, you can't very well jump out in front and do it before the thing is done. But you are a Republican. We would understand if you turned out to be a liar. That's okay. All right. So we'll see. At least we get some rundown, some picture of what the procedure is here. So I'm pleased with that. We have only a couple of minutes left. So the question becomes what to launch into next that we won't finish, but that, needs to be on the record for Thursday rather than waiting for Friday. I can wait this one until Friday. Tomorrow is the deadline, I think, right? For the passage of a FISA renewal. So we can spend a few minutes talking about Charlie Savage's article exploring what happens if this surveillance law, if the renewal doesn't happen in time and FISA expires. So we probably owe it to ourselves to take a look at that. Let's see. This is just CNN's version of what's going on in the House and how this whole thing has been structured. I guess I'll note for the record, though, that Republicans in Arizona have once again blocked an effort to try to repeal that 1864 abortion law. Arizona Republicans, as they say in TPM's headline, gleefully shoot down Democrats' attempts to repeal the 1864 abortion ban. So they're telling you who they are out there, and you should believe them. Okay, what do we have? Kate Riga has reported this one. Arizona Republicans celebrated Wednesday after swatting down Democrats' 4th attempt in 2 weeks to repeal the state's near-total abortion ban, which the state Supreme Court upheld last week. Representative David Livingston, Republican of, it says Republican Arizona, turned to the galleries and, he is from Arizona. They're all from Arizona. I don't know why they're listed this way, as if they were members of Congress. But where in Arizona is usually what they tell us when we talk about state representatives. But anyway, Republican David Livingston turned to the galleries stuffed with a mix of pro and anti-abortion rights protesters and applauded his supporters, raising his fists in triumph. Okay. Majority Whip Teresa Martinez mouthed, "We got you," and did a thumbs up. Majority Leader Leo Biasucci grinned and accepted a handshake on his way out of the chamber. They were posing for their far-right base, scoffed Assistant Minority Leader Oscar de los Santos, calling TPM from the House floor minutes after the last procedural vote failed. Arizona Democrats, capitalizing on the national attention that the state has received after the court upheld perhaps the most draconian ban in the country, had this week and last attempted to get their often introduced repeal bill onto the floor. They were hoping that a few vulnerable Republicans, fearful of the electoral retribution anti-abortion measures have wrought, would cross over to vote with them. Arizona state Democrats plan to push for more repeal efforts, too. Okay, time for us to play our outro music and get out. Oh, I'm sorry. I was going to say it's Arizona Senate Democrats plan to push for repeal as well. On Wednesday, Representative Matt Gress, Republican, crossed over to help Democrats advance the bill, but only did so at the last possible moment. Typically a sign that a politician wants to be on the record voting one way, but without the risk of being the last needed yes vote, looking for a freebie there. Both votes failed with a 30-30 tie. They're really going to the mats for this one. One vote would make the entire difference here, De Los Santos said. We're exploring every option. We have to get this thing repealed. A number of Republicans in public and private support repealing it, and then they come in here and they vote the exact opposite way. He said Democrats are having conversations with Republicans who purport to oppose the 1864 abortion ban, but said they've been told that Republicans generally will oppose any effort to advance the bill in any form. Well, anyway, very interesting. There's more to it. I encourage you to read it. They get into a little bit of nitty-gritty, but we don't have the time to do that. Just wanted to sort of put that on the record. 4 attempts to do it and a celebration every time they block it. There's some good footage to be had for campaign ads, although usually you can't use House footage for that, but maybe you can use state legislative footage for a national campaign. We'll see. Time now to hand things over to Justice Putnam for the West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy.
You have been listening to Kagro in the Morning with David Waldman.
Some of what he's got on tap for you today. Jared Kushner has made $40 million a year from the Gulf Arab states and their billions of investments in him, while zero of those dollars are going into American businesses or to help everyday Americans. Of course, why would he be doing something like that? That's crazy. All right, that and much more coming next. Stay tuned.